Hey folks, my name is Burton, and I'm here to talk about the use of the Experiential Learning Grant for a post-baccalaureate course in the Faculty of Education that I ran last July. The course was called Places Are Pedagogical, an Introduction to Place-Based Education. I'm new to the Faculty of Education. I'm just coming up to the end of my second year. Before, I was a K-12 teacher in the public education system in Winnipeg, and I was also a principal teacher. The work I do here, I teach social studies to pre-service teachers and also in sustainability education as well. I do teach some post-baccalaureate courses as well. For those of you that aren't familiar with the education lingo, a post-baccalaureate is essentially a degree you take as an in-service teacher. So once you have your B.Ed, you go in, and it's 10 courses that you take, which is really applied work where you are thinking about your practice and then looking for ways to expand your practice. It's not a research diploma or degree like a master's or a PhD. It's a really applied diploma. So we get a broad array of teachers that come into the post-baccalaureate program. We have 400 current post-baccalaureate students at the University of Winnipeg, so we have an awful lot. We have the biggest post-bac program in Manitoba. My research is mostly focused on climate change education as well as place-based education. So I need to talk about what place-based education is because that kind of frames how I designed the course and the use of the Experiential Learning Grant. Place-based education reconceptualizes what teaching and learning looks like, particularly in the K-12 system, but also post-secondary. And it really recenters the role of the community. So before government education 200 years ago, a lot of learning that young people would do was oriented in the community. What they would learn and how they would learn was guided by the needs of the community, because often those young people would stay in that community. And that's still the case today. Most our graduates will leave the K-12 system and remain in the communities that they are in. However, what they learn is often disconnected from those communities. It's disconnected from the nuances in those spaces. So if you go to rural Manitoba, northern Manitoba, Brandon, Winnipeg, those are different contexts. But we have a curriculum that's provincial. And what I mean by that is what is taught in the curriculum is meant to look at Manitoba as a whole without that nuance. And so place-based education looks to reconsider what and how we teach oriented towards the community. It's taken some changes over the last 20 years. It's a relatively new approach to teaching and learning in terms of scholarship, but it's increasingly informed by critical pedagogy, which is critical theory and contesting and looking at the root causes of issues in communities, and also settler colonialism as well. And this is where I really wanted to focus the course. In my view, you cannot understand the way things are in Winnipeg without that understanding of settler colonialism and that history and legacy of genocide in this community. The way that you teach place-based education is often through inquiry. And what this means is it's recentering the student in terms of having them have choice in what they learn and how they learn it as well. So there is absolutely a role for direct instruction where a teacher gets up in front of the class and teaches directly to students, but it's also allowing space for students to go out, explore, generate their own questions, and explore the community, talk to people in the community, go to spaces in the community, have them generate their own questions, problematize issues in the community, and then have that as an avenue for what they learn, which then the teacher's responsibility is to look at how that aligns with the curriculum. And interpreting curriculum in certain ways allows for that. David Greenwood from Lakehead University came up with these 6 questions, or 6 provocations of how we can recenter thinking about place in our lives and then linking that to the education system. So one of these pieces is being in place. Staying in a classroom, it's hard to do that. So for him, situated learning and contextualizing learning is really important. Learning the stories of places and letting places teach us about where we came from, where we are, where we're going is really important as well. This idea of contested spaces. Winnipeg is a beautiful place for looking at how place is contested. I think about the Forks, right? What was that place originally? It was an Indigenous meeting point. Then it became a train station where newcomers were coming in to settle Manitoba, and Winnipeg. Then it got taken over and is kind of like a touristy spot now. But there are movements to reclaim that space. The Treaty 1 organization has a building there now. There's a space across the river that has been reclaimed as an Indigenous park. So it's still a contested space. But the way that place-based education would approach that is thinking about how can we think about this as a story of who we are as Manitobans and Winnipegs. Apprenticing ourselves to place, so looking at education as a way to be in tune with place and work for the benefit of places and people in those places. Caring for place as well, looking at restoring places that have been damaged by humans, and also honoring places. And this particularly links to Indigenous perspectives as well. Knowing that places have stories themselves and honoring that and recognizing that. So second week of July, after 10 months of extremely hard work, teachers decided that they wanted to do a post-bac course in place-based education. This is how I designed the course. It was a balance between theory and practice. So there was a quite significant reading load to bathe students in the understanding of settler colonialism and the principles of place-based education. But to just teach place-based education in a classroom in July was, would have been torture, you know. So the role of the Experiential Learning Grant was to allow for us to get out of the classroom and spend time in the community learning in spaces. So we started off on the Monday in class, getting to know each other, talking about some of the readings. The Tuesday we went to the Forks. The Wednesday we came back into the classroom, but we also visited the Plug-in Institute as well, which was free and awesome and completely related to place-based education, coincidentally. We spent the day at Assiniboine Park on the Thursday, and then we came back to the U of W on the Friday to consolidate our learning. I want to show you some pictures to prove that I use the money well, hopefully. Part of place-based education is decentering the role of the teacher and acknowledging that there are experts in the community that can speak better to the stories of place than the teacher can. Part of that is giving a platform to folks like Sean Oliver, who, just like Wayne, is reconnecting with his Métis ancestry. Sean is a land-based educator in Luriel School Division, and he was kind enough to take one of his first days of his summer break to come and offer us a Métis walking tour. And essentially what Sean has done with one of his colleagues is develop a 3-hour walking tour that starts at the Forks Marketplace and walks around the community and into St. Boniface, using places as sites for talking about the history of Métis resistance in this city. So rather than me doing that, which would have been completely inappropriate, Sean has been developing this program, and it really did a great job of kicking off the intersection between place and settler colonialism. So this is us at, I think it's Val Vint created this sculpture, Education is the New Bison. We also went to Langside Learning Garden. How many of you have spent time in Langside Learning Garden? Okay, so Langside Learning Garden's awesome. It's just on Langside Street. A space that was developed, changed. It used to be a house. The house got knocked down, and a few folks from the University of Winnipeg about a decade ago said, let's do something with this space. So they made an Indigenous Learning Garden, and alongside it there's a website that talks about the different plants in there that are all Indigenous plants, describe the uses of those plants, and there's an audio component too where the Indigenous names are read by an Indigenous elder. So these students went to this space 3 times over the course of the week, and this was within a week, to the extent that I could, an attempt to have students reconnect over and over with a place so they could develop a relationship with it. So this was work that the University of Winnipeg had already done, and it made sense to connect. It was just across the street. We also went on a riverboat tour, and this is where, if you've ever done the riverboat tour, it's a wonderful way to it's like the familiar strange, right? So by being on the river and looking out at the city, these stories of place change. So the riverboat tour talked about the history of the Forks. It talked about all these significant locations along the Red and Assiniboine River, and another way to kind of reorient students thinking about what it means to live here and the importance of the Forks to the history of Winnipeg. I also collaborated with Fort White Alive, who ran a water testing workshop. So this is some students at the Assiniboine River by Assiniboine Park who have dropped this gadget in, and then it kind of sucks water in. You pull it up, and then they're doing water testing here. The point of this was to show that humans have engaged in bad ways with our watershed. And so through doing these testing, they were able to identify what chemical pollutants were in the water and therefore determine how that was impacting oxygen in the river, how that was impacting fish population as well. So another way of reconsidering what we are doing with this place as a starting point for how we might restore or live in balance with place as well. Assessment's pretty tricky for experiences. So what I tried to do here was have a balance between students situating themselves on Treaty 1 territory. So we used the Treaty Relations Commission's My Treaty Story lesson plan, which was where students were creating a personalized lesson plan. And this was guided by the work of Negon Sinclair, who was exasperated over tired land acknowledgements. He wrote an editorial in the Free Press suggesting that it was time that we personalized and made action a part of our treaty story. So that's how students started the class. Throughout the class, they completed a learning log, which is where every day they would reflect on the reading and their experiences in their own ways. Students then had to go into their own school community and develop a community map. So this is physically mapping on a piece of paper what their community looked like and potential sites of learning that could connect to curriculum as well. So they're starting to think about taking those ideas of theory and practice from the course and applying it into their work as K-12 teachers. And then the option at the end was to either do a research paper where they could look in depth about the potential of a space and the history of a space, or create a unit plan, which was a series of lessons that they could then take into their practice as well. So in sum, we used the money for the honoraria for Sean. We used the honoraria for paying for the Fort White Alive water testing workshop. And it also allowed us to get into places like the Leaf and on the Winnipeg Waterways bus for free, right? So rather than asking students on top of their tuition to pay these fees, we incorporated it into the course itself. Just want to say thank you for all the money and for all the support. And I think this is a wicked grant, and I'm so happy to see so many people using it in different ways to get people out, to get people connected beyond their courses. So thank you.